just to say that we are going to record this session. We'll probably stop it after the actual presentations and not for the Q&A. Very welcome to take questions in the chat as we go along, which I can ask Sazna at the end, or do feel free to put your hand up and you can ask them in person when Sazna's finished speaking. So anyway, I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker, who's Sazna Jayadeva, who's going to be talking about No Country for Young Engineers, Student Migration from India to Germany as a Second Chance of Success. Thanks, Sazna. Looking forward to hearing your talk.
Great, can you see that all right?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Great. Let me just 1 second. All right, so hi everyone. I'm just turning on my timer. Right, so I'm going to start off with a little bit of context about Indian students in Germany. So the number of Indians studying in Germany has almost doubled in the last 5 years, making India the second largest source country of international students in Germany. The majority of Indian students in Germany are enrolled on postgraduate engineering programs. Now, Germany is a relatively affordable study destination in the global north for Indian students because German public universities charge low to no tuition fees, even for international students. Germany is also offering an increasing number of English-taught postgraduate courses, which is making the country's higher education system even more accessible to non-German speakers. So in today's presentation, I'm going to be exploring what aspirations underpin student migration from India to Germany, and also how German education credentials are valued among Indian students. And in doing this, I'm going to be intervening in 2 scholarly discussions. So firstly, in the scholarship on student migration from the East to the West, a dominant argument has been that international students seek to study abroad in order to acquire overseas education credentials, which they believe will improve their career prospects in their home countries and give them a positional advantage in the labor market. Indeed, in the context of a congested graduate labor market, the obtaining of overseas credentials has been discussed as being a potent strategy for claiming distinction. I'm going to be citing Rachel a lot. So the scholarship has also recognized that with increased participation in international higher education, the pursuit of elite education at world-class universities that are recognized and known for their reputation has risen. In contrast, in this paper today, I'm going to be showing how the Indian engineering students that I interviewed in Germany did not imagine that a German master's degree would provide them with a competitive edge on the job market in India. In doing so, this paper will join research that has highlighted how alternative claims to distinction beyond academic and institutional prestige are facilitating educational mobility of certain groups of student migrants. Secondly, in existing scholarship, international students have long been discussed as being very privileged actors who go abroad to study in order to reproduce their class position. However, this paper will join a growing body of scholarship that has highlighted how this type of education mobility is also becoming a strategy for less privileged groups to acquire capital that they perceive themselves as lacking. So before we go any further, I'll just very quickly outline the methods. So the fieldwork for this project was conducted between 2017, 2018, and then again in 2020. I conducted interviews with 45 Indians. The vast majority were current students who were studying at 17 higher education institutions across Germany. So here's a little word cloud with the names of the different universities at which my interlocutors were studying. 3 of my interlocutors had recently graduated, and the remaining 5 were still in India and were in the process of applying to go to Germany for study. Only 7 of my interlocutors were female, and this is reflective of the fact that the majority of Indians studying in Germany were male at the time of my data collection, and even today. All of my interlocutors described themselves coming from middle-class families. So moving on to my findings. So engineering education in India is highly vertically stratified. Only a very small percentage of engineering students are successful in gaining admission to the country's most elite engineering colleges, which are called the Indian Institutes of Technology, or the IITs. So to just give you a sense of how difficult it is to get into one of the IITs, in the year that I conducted the majority of my fieldwork, over 1 million students had attempted the entrance exam to get admission to an IIT for their undergraduate degree. But only 11,279 had actually been able to secure a place at one of these institutions. So none of the students that I interviewed had been able to get admission to an IIT for their bachelor's degree. And this was not because they were not academically excellent students, but because the competition was insane. Now, it has been argued in ISM scholarship that for some students, study abroad may be a strategy to avoid or escape from actual or anticipated education-related failure in the home country, including failure associated with not being able to get admission to an elite university. For instance, with respect to India, Forsberg notes how one factor driving students to go abroad to study is precisely the difficulty of getting into elite universities in India, such as the IITs. However, the vast majority of my interlocutors had not considered study abroad upon failing to gain admission to an IIT. And this was largely because it was something that they just didn't see as being within their economic means, meaning they just didn't see study abroad as something they could afford to do. And I'll return to this point. Some had attended relatively high status colleges, engineering colleges, although not on the level of the IIT. Some had attended middling colleges, and some had attended colleges that they viewed and described as being quite low status. Now, for engineering students in India, the main route for getting one's first job after completing one's bachelor's degree was through recruitment drives conducted by employers at one's college campus, or as my interlocutors refer to it, campus placements. And one's job prospects at these campus placements depended to a very large extent on the status of one's higher education institution. So while those from high status institutions had their pick of desirable jobs, those from more middling and lower status institutions really struggled to find jobs that matched their qualifications and their interests. One's field of study also shaped one's job prospects. Because of India's so-called IT boom, there are significantly more jobs available in IT and software than in what were described as being the core engineering fields, so mechanical, chemical, electrical, and civil engineering. So it was especially hard for people in these core fields to find suitable employment. The vast majority of my interlocutors had not been able to get desirable jobs in their fields of specialization after graduating from their bachelor's degrees. And this was certainly reflective of broader trends at the time of my fieldwork and even now. So these screenshots are newspaper articles, which really show how a lot of engineers are still struggling with unemployment and bad employment outcomes through campus placements. Prior to embarking on study in Germany, my interlocutors had thus found themselves in various undesirable situations. So nearing the end of their bachelor's degrees and struggling to find a suitable job, unemployed for a few years while frantically applying to various jobs and trying to do entrance exams to pivot into MBAs, for example. Or some people were even employed in jobs that didn't match their qualifications and didn't match their interests. Upon finding out about the affordable cost of study in Germany, they had come to view study abroad as a strategy to escape from failure or anticipated failure on the Indian job market. Now, Germany, through offering English-taught postgraduate courses and charging low to no tuition fees, even for international students, had made study abroad for the first time a viable option for the majority of my interlocutors. So most of my interlocutors said that they had always seen study abroad beyond their financial means before discovering Germany. So here's a quote that really represents a sentiment that was expressed across most interviews. I'm going to read it out. This is from one of my interlocutors. He says, initially, during my schooling and undergraduate degree, my mindset was like, only the people with money can do this kind of stuff, meaning go abroad. Because countries like Germany were very less known. And the main destinations for study abroad was US or UK or Australia. In all these countries, they charge a very huge tuition fee. A few of my interlocutors had been considering study in a place such as the US, which was often discussed as being the typical study destination for Indian engineers who wanted to do a postgraduate degree abroad. And for these students, Germany presented a path to study abroad that was not characterized by the kind of financial risk and burden that they had always associated with study abroad. So here's another quote from another interlocutor. He says, you know, USA is too expensive for masters for a middle-class guy. I don't want to be in debt at a young age. That's why I'm choosing Germany. And several of my interlocutors were also worried about their parents having to mortgage houses and send them to the United States when their parents were nearing retirement. So Germany was really seen as offering a financially less risky path to study abroad. So far we've seen that Germany was perceived as offering an accessible escape from failure or perceived failure on the Indian job market. But what were my interlocutors' post-study aspirations? What were they hoping to get out of study in Germany? So the majority of my interlocutors, quite strikingly, did not want to obtain settlement status in Germany, and most of them viewed themselves as returning to India. However, they did not feel confident that their German postgraduate credentials would increase their employability in the eyes of Indian employers or even employers in other countries. So in my interviews, I would ask my interlocutors whether they were likely to get a job in India if they were to go back to India immediately after completing their master's degree. And this was a really typical response. So this student says, a master's degree from Germany doesn't help much in India. If you have work experience, you can actually negotiate with employers, because without work experience, they will treat you as a fresher, meaning somebody who's just fresh out of college. Strikingly, what my interlocutors felt would be recognized and valued by employers in India and elsewhere was work experience in their subfield of engineering at a German company. So this is post-study work experience. Importantly, students stressed that Germany was an especially valuable country in which to acquire such work experience. In their reflections of why they had seen Germany as being such an attractive destination, even prior to arriving in the country, several understandings and perceptions of Germany were prominent. So central to students' imaginative geographies of Germany was the perception of the country as an engineering superpower, as one student put it. So while many reflected that they had not really known much about Germany's higher education system or Germany as an international study destination until relatively recently, they had long been aware, they said, that Germany was synonymous with engineering excellence. Also prominent in students' imaginative geographies of Germany was the perception of the country as highly developed and Western. Students explained that as a highly developed Western country, they felt confident that Germany would be able to offer them a first world quality of life, and even more importantly, a robust job market with a large number of desirable job opportunities for engineers. And a German master's degree was also viewed as a relatively safe path to this robust job market because of the manner in which the higher education system in Germany was imagined. So in stark contrast to the higher education systems in the US and in India, the German higher education system was understood and imagined as being relatively non-hierarchical and populated by universities of uniformly high quality, with employers not really valuing degrees from some universities significantly above others. So we have some interesting quotes here. So the first one is from one of my interlocutors, whom I call Manjunath. He says, very much unlike in India, what I've heard is that most of the universities in Germany have almost similar standards. Lectures are almost similar, and companies normally don't differentiate between people who study at X uni and people who study at Y uni. Here's another quote. This student says, education in Germany is generally way better than the US. Here, meaning in Germany, everything is monitored by the government. Every university here is good in one or the other field. In Germany, they are giving the education for free. They have no intention of cheating you. And this is really interesting, but I don't have enough time to unpack the way in which the kind of non-marketized education in Germany was also equated with a more ethical system and a better quality system. So anyway, for the vast majority of my interlocutors, a German master's degree was first and foremost viewed as a passport to accessing the German job market. So in interviews, most said that had they been able to directly access the German job market with their Indian bachelor's degree, they would have never considered doing a master's degree in the country. However, it was widely felt that an Indian bachelor's degree, unless it was acquired at one of India's most prestigious engineering colleges, would not be valued on the German job market. A master's degree was also valued by my interlocutors as offering time, space, and opportunities to prepare themselves for the German job market in a way that would have been much harder to do from India. So many explained that internships and placements at companies, which were built into most master's programs, would give them a chance to gain familiarity with German corporate culture and pick up corporate soft skills, which they believe would increase their employability. Also, through their master's program and related internships, they hope to build social networks that would further help them find the right kinds of jobs. The 2 and sometimes more than 2 years of the master's degree was also seen as providing time and opportunities to learn German, which again, many felt would have been much harder to do in India. So although they didn't really need to know German in order to do a master's degree in Germany, it was widely felt that German language skills were crucial for career success in Germany. And I'll return to this point. So most planned to work in Germany for several years, after which they believed that they would be able to get good jobs in India or a third country. And importantly, they believed that they would have the agency and the freedom to go wherever they wished and find a good career. So to conclude, within the Indian middle classes, engineering degrees have long carried a very high level of social prestige. Nevertheless, despite having met the expectations associated with a middle-class culture of education in India through obtaining a bachelor's in engineering, most of my interlocutors had struggled to find suitable employment. So with roots to class reproduction, social mobility, and the achievement of professional ambitions closed off at home, study in Germany had offered my interlocutors a second chance at success. Indeed, this paper has shown how affordable English-taught postgraduate courses in Germany have expanded the space across which and the ways in which a new demographic of Indians, many of whom had previously not viewed study abroad as part of their trajectories, are navigating university to work transitions. The paper also joins research that has highlighted how obtaining overseas work experience to complement foreign education credentials has become an important goal for many international students. And this paper adds to that research the insight that in certain contexts, acquiring such work experience may be the main purpose of study abroad, which is essential for career success upon return to the home country or upon continued mobility to other destinations. In this context, the paper highlights how place-based markers of distinction that relate to how post-study work experience acquired in the study destination may be viewed by employers elsewhere could be more relevant in driving certain international student flows than markers of distinction associated with the quality or prestige of higher education institutions. And then finally, we know that English's position as a global language means that Anglophone countries have especially benefited from rising student migration, and many non-Anglophone countries are offering English-taught programs in order to be able to claim a share of this international market for higher education. And it's certainly true that without English-taught postgraduate programs, it's unlikely that Germany would have emerged as a popular study destination among Indian students. However, given that the students that I interviewed did not see obtaining a degree as being the sole or even the main purpose of study in Germany, the extent of the English medium experience, the extent of the English medium experience the country could offer students was quite limited. So most of the students I interviewed perceived German language skills as being necessary for success on the job market, and therefore something that must be acquired in order for study in Germany to make any sense. So the time and the effort it would take to acquire even intermediate level German language skills was seen as an investment that was worth making only because of the low cost of study in Germany. So several of my interlocutors in the course of discussing Europe as a higher education destination mentioned specific well-reputed English-taught postgraduate programs in the Netherlands and Sweden, where international students were charged quite high tuition fees. And a regular theme in these discussions was that if you were going to pay high tuition fees, you might as well go to an English-speaking country where everyday life and career success did not require learning an additional language. So with some German provinces having introduced or planning to introduce tuition fees, it remains to be seen how much Indian students will be willing to pay in university fees before the language tax becomes experienced as too high. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much. I will stop sharing.
Thanks very much, Sasna. So now if you've got questions, it's your opportunity to ask. You can put them in the